Hello everyone and welcome back to Tarot and Torch. Today we are going to talk all about February decks that I'm going to be using and just kind of the overall vibe that I want to have for the month of February. So as I mentioned in my kind of ending of January video, February is going to continue to be very busy for me. There's a lot that I have a lot of high, lofty kind of, goals and ambitions and dreams. And we'll see how much I can actually get to all of that. Of course, February is, if you do celebrate, it's Valentine's Day. If not, it's, Halloween, or I forget the other name for it when you don't celebrate Valentine's Day, but there is one. But in any case, no matter where you are with, all of that, I do like to kind of work with the colors sometimes of Valentine's Day, and incorporate those into my deck choices. I am someone that actually does celebrate Halloween, and this is just because Halloween is my favorite holiday. And so my husband and I, for instance, last year I believe it was, or was it the year before now? I think it was last year that we saw Hard Eyes in the theaters, and so that's kind of a tradition to watch kind of scary love type movies. For instance, I love Lisa Frankenstein for that as well, and just a lot of other kind of horror romance movies. Cold Bodies was another one, and that's just kind of how my brain works. Now I do love fantasy love movies as well, kind of romance movies, but I'm not the biggest, just plain old romance person. I never really was into just kind of regular rom-coms or anything. One of my favorite kind of romance movies used to be Shakespeare in Love, which I kind of want to rewatch because that was just something that I really enjoyed watching a lot. Actually, when I was younger. It makes you wonder kind of what happened in the 90s and early 2000s, doesn't it? But in any case, some things that I am doing for this month. I'm reading Dowry of Blood, which I already started, and I love vampire fiction, vampire stories, and imagery. And, I grew up with Anne Rice and Bram Stoker's Dracula, and Dracula itself, just Bram Stoker's Dracula, the book and the movie. And I love kind of that vibe of vampire stories around Valentine's Day for the same reason I mentioned. It's more kind of that Halloween kind of deep, passionate feeling, but also with the incorporation of some horror sounds better, I think. But okay, so I started this book already, and let's see, I'm only on page 51, so I'm not very deeply entrenched into it yet, but this is going to be my February read. This is written from the perspective of Dracula's, I believe it's his first wife in this, and her name is Constanza, I think. Yeah, Constanta. Constanta. So she basically is transformed by Dracula himself, and there's this kind of deeply resentful tone that you kind of pick up on immediately as you open the book. And she's talking about Dracula in this kind of reverent but also hateful way. So there's a lot, and of course I'm not going to go into any details in case you're interested, but there's just a lot of kind of themes of this is not your typical romance. There's a lot of darkness in the story, but also just very interesting to see the perspective of one of Dracula's wives, and not from Dracula himself or like a victim per se, but his actual, you know, wife. And to go with that, of course, I have Tarot of Vampires, which is arguably, in my opinion, one of the most romantic and perfect vampire decks. I mean, I did grow up in the 90s, so the imagery from this deck was very present in a lot of the films that you see, again, like Anne Rice's Interview with the Vampire, Queen of the Damned, all of those kind of older films, even Bram Stoker's Dracula with some of it. So, you know, it does have that darkness, but there's a romance. Like, look at this young vampire holding a rose. I mean, it's so beautiful. And yes, it's a little strange, but I mean, it's a vampire deck, so it's not going to be kind of your average images, but I find it to be gorgeous and stunning, and there's a lot of roses, and you know, just the clothes that they wear, and the imagery just evokes that 90s time period for me. And like, this Lover's card is just stunning with all of the white roses in the background and that pop of red. Just beautiful. And I mean, I could go on about this deck. You already probably have heard me ramble about this deck, so I won't do that to you. But perfect pairing, in my opinion, to go with the book and the feeling of February. Okay, here's one that kind of what I was saying in the beginning, where I like working with decks that have this color scheme of these kind of reds or pinks, but maybe a little unusual of a choice for Valentine's month or February. This is the Notori Tarot and Light, and I actually got this deck for Valentine's Day several years back, so it's just a Valentine's Day deck to me. But I love this deck so much. I've edged this in red. I don't think it came edged in red, did it? No, I'm pretty sure I edged this. But this is a deck that goes with the Goetia deck. They're like a pairing, and I do have the Goetia deck as well. But this deck is angels, and now I am someone who struggles a bit with certain elements of imagery dealing with... I can struggle a bit with imagery that kind of references Christianity, just because of my upbringing, and things that I faced going to Catholic schools. But I love this deck so much. It feels very magical in a sense of occult magic. And so it does have a very prominent place in my collection, because I work with it to kind of, you know, have that same imagery with angels and kind of that divine energy, but not necessarily working with any religion. So it kind of helps me in that way. And but besides that, it's just beautiful. I mean, it's absolutely breathtaking when you actually sit with the images. And it's also interesting to kind of, if you do work with angels, to see all of the correspondences. And, you know, that also, again, links it to occult kind of Solomonic magic. But I haven't, at least not at this point in time, worked with it in that way. I just love the associations, and I find it fascinating. But this deck, I will tell you, can give you some really incredible readings. They're very spot on, and for me it is uplifting much of the time. It is still truthful, but in a very positive way. That's just how I have found it. But, I mean, I could see where it could hit kind of hard too. It depends on your relationship with the imagery, but for me it's very, it does have a very kind of loving energy to it, and more of a self-loving energy, I should say. But it's a very interesting deck, unique, colorful, and it just has that power to it when you are looking for something kind of outside of yourself that's going to give you a message that you may not get elsewhere. So I love this deck a lot, and I reach for it around this time of year usually, because it does have those bold reds in it and whites, which I associate with Valentine's Day for some reason. But it definitely gives you messages unlike pretty much anything else. And you can see why with the imagery, that it gives you a lot to kind of play with. Okay. So it's very expansive, and it doesn't follow the rules of kind of normal Rider-Waite tarot. It definitely has its own system to it. And along the same kind of vein, we have the Lacrimosa Tarot, which you've seen before. And I continue to reach for this deck. It's, I mean, it's gorgeous and provides a lot of depth in readings and goes so well with everything else. But there's a quietness to this deck. I mean, just a beautiful, reflective, sometimes pensive, but not in a depressive kind of way, at least not for me. It does help, you know, work through some, it helps me work through some difficult traumas, but for different reasons, just because, again, with the kind of biblical imagery in some of these, but it's in a supportive way. It helps me work through those. But it's very quiet, very peaceful, and of course with the art that has been chosen and the kind of darkening of the background, it just speaks that much more clearly. And it speaks that much more clearly, and I love the hearts in this deck, the suit of hearts, which is cups. But isn't that just amazing? But there's a softness to it, a stillness, very deep reflections. I love working with this deck at night, and it really does give you some inspiration and a lot to work with in any reading, but emotionally helpful. Okay, trying not to sit here all day and look through each one. Okay. So that is the Lacrimosa Tarot by Rose Bay Tarot. Now, I don't feel that I've shown this one before, but this is the Tarot of Aphrodite. And I don't know which edition this is. I believe it was the second edition, because I remember it coming out and I missed the first run, and then I was so upset. But then the creator, Natasha Fromm, she did another round, and I was ecstatic, you know, being someone who is very Venusian. My rising sign is Taurus, and as well as my sun and my Mercury. So I have a lot of Venusian energy, and Aphrodite just is a goddess that I work with for that kind of reinforcement, especially because I have my Venus is in Aries, so sometimes I really need to tap into the softer side of myself. But this deck, it's very pink, as you can see. It's beautiful and has that, you know, antiquity about it, but the choices are lovely. And I don't know how much of this I can show, unfortunately, as YouTube has all of these new restrictions and rules around what you're allowed to show and what you're not. But they're the images are gorgeous. This image, I believe I used to have a poster of this on my wall at some point when I was growing up. It was, I believe it was King Arthur, supposed to be King Arthur. But it's just a beautiful deck, and sometimes you just need a beautiful deck with all of the fabrics and the colors and the depth, and you know, it's one that I turn to more for that softer side, and the Waterhouse paintings are right up my alley. I was an avid student of Waterhouse paintings growing up. I used to go to the bookstore and just pick up the Waterhouse art, kind of illustrated Waterhouse book, and just look through it every day, and I love them. This one's also a Waterhouse, but it brings such a magic, and the colors are gorgeous, and I think that the creator of this deck deepened some of the colors, of course, and changed some things, but you know, overall it's just very lovely, very very sensual, but also has kind of a playful innocence to it. I think that's beautiful. I love the windows. I don't know why lately windows have been something I've been focusing on. You know, those beautiful cottage windows or castle windows especially. Everybody's naked in this deck. Okay. But this is a beautiful deck. I love this deck a lot, and I work with Aphrodite more for self-love and kind of any kind of aspect of relationship that I'm working on as well, but also because, you know, as a tarot reader, for the public, there's a lot of love readings as well, so I just feel it's important to cultivate that relationship with Aphrodite and to maintain it. And the last deck that I want to show you for my work for February is the Softest Shade Oracle, which is also by Rose Bay Tarot, and the colors are so lovely and really help to kind of bridge that place between winter and spring for me. It is the softest shade, these pinks, and it reminds me of something about it reminds me of Lisa Frank in the best possible way, but a little bit more muted. And also with better art. But I love this oracle. It just provides such deep, reflective cards that you can really, the messages are really something that you can journal about, just taking one and really just focusing on that for the entire day. There's a lot to kind of mull over and think about, but I really enjoy the colors and the feeling. There's kind of a inner teenager feeling that I get from this deck that I love to work with in terms of healing and relationships. And I love that the cards are huge. I mean, I don't think I've mentioned this, but I'm very tall and I have very long hands and fingers. So I love larger cards. It's just something that tangibly feels better for me. So whenever there's, and plus it just feels more portal-like, which is something that I look for in a lot of decks. That ability to kind of get into the card, do path working, get lost in the card and the art and the meanings and the energy. So beautiful cards and meanings as well. And it also pairs fantastically with the Aphrodite tarot. If I had more time, I would kind of do that, but perhaps in a future video. So that's really it. February is going to be incredibly busy. I'm hoping to get to work with all of these decks and to be able to read my book. And I know I have a lot of work cut out for me, but also it's all good things. It's things that I'm greatly looking forward to, and February does start us off with the Year of the Fire Horse, so in the middle of February, so it's time to kind of get going, you know? So I hope that you all have enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for being here with me and listening to me talk on and on about decks. It's wonderful to have a community to talk with these things about, or people that just enjoy looking at cards. But I will talk with all of you very, very soon.